Several years ago, while I was still living on Cape Cod, I was working with an insurance agency, and I was primarily specializing in working with group insurance, working with local companies, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and helping them to enroll in healthcare plans. It was difficult work, very busy and very intense, a lot of communication, a lot of paperwork back and forth. I was working with one particularly good-sized company and enrolling hopefully a lot of people, which would have been, of course, a pretty good-sized commission. So I was pretty excited about it. And I closed the deal. I was talking to the business owner, said, okay, we're going to go ahead with your plan. Go ahead and fax over all the agreements and make these copies and that copies and all that. And I said, wonderful. So I went to see the office girl or administrative assistant or whatever you wanted to call her. And I said, okay, I need this copy, and I need this copy, and this has to get faxed to so-and-so, and this has to get faxed to so-and-so, and all the hard copies got to get out in the mail right away. And she looked at me, and she put down the book she was reading, and she said, Steve, it's my quiet time right now. I said, it's your what? And it turns out she had negotiated with the owners that 1 hour of every day, she could have quiet time. And just sit there at her desk and read her book and do her nails and whatever else she wanted to do and not answer the phone and not do anything. And I said, well, when will your quiet time be over? And she said, well, about 45 minutes, And I found out as time went on that, she was really, really jealous about her quiet time. And when that happened, the phones did not get answered, the mail did not go out, nothing happened because she was having her quiet time. And of course I was very critical of that. And as I think about it, I do it too. I do it too. And lately, God's been helping me discover just how much I do that. I've been aware, very much aware lately, of all the different roles and the different responsibilities that I have. And I've always been very jealous about my time. I want my personal time, my quiet time, my prayer time, whatever you want to call it, and nothing better come between me and that time, and God help you if you do. But that's my time. It's not for anybody. It's my time. And I've been discovering lately, as things have begun to happen, that how terribly wrong I am. I have a family, and my family needs me. I'm an employee, and my coworkers and my customers need me. I'm a priest, and my bishop and my brother priests need me. I'm a friar, and my brother friars need me. And I'm a pastor, and my parishioners need me. And I begin to discover just how much I forget about all those needs and think about only mine. And I think that's one of the problems that we deal with today. We all, in one way or another, want our quiet time. We all, in one way or another, are enslaved to our schedules, or what we think are our schedules. And this is supposed to happen at this time, and this is supposed to happen at this time, and it better not happen here. Because that's just not what I have time for. My time is important to me, it's sacred to me, and don't mess with it. That's the way we handle life all too often. And what I think we have to discover is that it's not about following or serving or giving when we feel inclined to do so, or only when we have the time to do so. It's about doing all of that when God says, do it, whether the time is appropriate or convenient for us or not. And that's always a very difficult, at least for me, been a very, very difficult lesson for me to lay hold of and to latch on to. Because all too often, I want my time for myself, and God and all my responsibilities will come when there's time for that. And that brings us to today's gospel, and it presents us with a significant problem. Here we have Jesus, who is beginning now in this as the Gospel of Luke moves on, spending less and less time going to the synagogues because he's not wanted there, and spending more and more time out on the road, out in the fields, out by the seashore, finding people, going to them wherever they are, and getting the message to them. wherever they are. In this case, they happen to be standing along the shore, and so he gets into one of the boats and goes out a little bit and talks to them from the boat. And then he says to Peter, go out a little bit further and lower your nets for a catch. But here's the problem. This wasn't the time to go fishing. Hey, back in that day, back in that time, in that age, you go fishing at nighttime. That's the best time to go. And Peter brings that to Christ's attention, saying, we did that. We were out all night when we were supposed to be out there, and we didn't get anything. But since you say so, and maybe just to shut him up, okay, we'll go. And of course, you know what happens. They come up with this miraculous catch of fish, and everything changes. Everybody knew that wasn't the time to go fishing. Everybody knew that you go fishing at nighttime. That's when you catch your fish. But Christ said, go now. Go now. And I think that's what we have to discover as we try and follow him, and as we try and submit our lives to him, recognizing that he calls us, recognizing that we're supposed to somehow serve him, recognizing that somehow we're supposed to bring others to him. And his message to us, and it's a difficult one, is you do that when it's convenient for me, not for you. Our schedules, our needs, our priorities don't matter. What matters is his schedule, his needs, his priorities. And it's difficult, really difficult, to keep that in mind and to adjust to that. Whenever the Lord calls, it doesn't matter what time it is. It doesn't matter what we think that we're doing is so important. Our schedules don't matter. Our needs don't matter. What matters is that he's calling us, and he's calling us right now. So they go and they have this huge catch of fish, and it symbolizes all these fish, what they're going to be doing for the rest of their lives. Jesus is telling them, forget about what you're used to. Forget about what you've been doing. Forget about all these patterns of behavior and patterns of thought that are so familiar and so sacred to you. Forget about all of that, because from now on you'll be doing what I want you to do, when I want you to do it, the way I want you to do it. That was hard for them, and I think it's still awfully, awfully hard for us. Again, I think we build our lives and we pattern our lives around what we think are our needs and our priorities, and our schedules are the only thing that matters to us, the only thing that's important to us. How many times when somebody asks you to do something do you say, I'll get to that, knowing that you never will, knowing that if you do decide to get to it, it'll be in your way, on your terms, when you feel you have the time. But if Christ were here standing before you and saying, will you do this? What then would be your response? What then would be the way that you answer? Would you say, I'll get to that? Or would you just do it? That's what we have to realize, that he is here, standing before us every day and saying, from now on, you'll be catching men. Go do it. Go do it. And it's not about saying, okay, whenever I have the time, I'll do that. Or whenever I'm done doing everything else that I have to do, I'll do that. No, he wants it done now, right now. And either we follow or we don't. Peter, in this passage today, as he confronts the power and the depth that is in Christ, is terrified and confronted with just how weak and how sinful he is, and says, please go away. I'm a sinful man. And I think all too often in our lives we do that too. Whenever he confronts us, whenever we find him near to us, we discover just how weak and just how sinful we are. And we too, in whatever we can, try and push him away and tell him not to bother with us, because we just can't handle what it is that he's confronting us with. Jesus would hear none of Peter's protests. He won't hear ours either. From now on, he said, you'll be catching men. That's what he says to you and to me every day. From now on, you'll be catching men. You'll be catching people. You'll be doing what I want you to do when I want you to do it. That's why we're here, isn't it? Don't we say that we're his disciples, that we're his followers, that he means everything in the world to us? There's a whole lot of debate among scripture scholars as to how this whole call of the apostles came about. There are some folks who say, well, obviously they had to know Jesus because they just wouldn't have just dropped everything and followed him. And others say, well, no, they didn't know him, and he just came out of the blue and told them what to do, and they did it. Either way you look at that, it doesn't matter. Whether they knew him or not, doesn't matter. All that matters is that at his word, at his command, confronted with his presence, confronted with who and what he was, they dropped everything, they left everything, and they followed. That's the only thing that matters. Confronted with him, confronted with the reality of his presence in their lives, they left everything and they followed him. That's what you and I have to do as well. Leave everything and follow him. That means forget about our schedules, our calendars, our priorities, whatever we think is important, whatever we think we need to be doing, our quiet time. Forget all of that and follow. Do what he says to do when he says to do it. I really struggle with that. I struggle with that as a priest. I really struggle with that as a Franciscan. One of the dangers in this type of lifestyle, especially with Franciscans, is that as you try and take hold of that command to let everything go and to follow, and you see how Francis did it, and one of the struggles as a Franciscan is that you want to somehow imitate him and go back to the 13th century and live in the 13th century. And you can't do that. None of us can. So I've tried and struggled. Well, how do you take that gospel priority, that call to just drop everything and follow? How do you translate that for right here and right now, for this time, this place, that culture? How do you do that? How is it that we can hear him and sense him in our lives, calling us, and as he did with them, say, from now on, you'll be catching men. From now on, forget everything. Forget everything that's important and just do this. Well, how do you translate that for right here and for right now? And I've been praying and searching and trying to find a way, and I believe I finally have. And I'd like to take a moment just to share a bit of that with you. Back a little bit over a year ago, you were given a challenge as a parish family. And you responded to that challenge magnificently. And your response to that challenge grew into what's now known as the John 6:35 initiative. And here it is. Look at that. That's beautiful. That's amazing. And because you've done so well, I think it's time for the next challenge. Not a challenge to replace this one, but to work along with it. You've heard His Grace talk about it, you've heard me talk about it, but there's a wonderful book called Radical by the Reverend David Platt, who I think puts into perspective what it means to follow Christ right now, to hear him right now, and to do what he wants right now. I think he's been able to make that translation that I've been talking about, looking at this time and this culture, and how do you take that call of Christ? How do you take that and make it full of meaning for right now? I think in that book he's done that. So here's the challenge. In a few weeks, we'll be done with our Wednesday night Bible study covering the book of Revelation. And what I'd like to do next is for all of us to get a copy of that book and spend the next couple of months working through it, reading through it, praying through it, discussing it together, and deciding how we, as individuals and as a parish family, will hear his call to become fishers of men and to drop everything and follow him. That's what I want us to do. That's what I think we need to do. We need to learn how to discover just what it is that he calls us to, just who he is in our lives, and to show us how to let go of everything, forget about our priorities, and focus on his. If we can do that, then he'll take us to places that we never imagined possible or never dreamt of. I'm not saying it's a demand, I'm saying it's a request. I would like us to do that. I think it's that important. I think it's that vital. I think it's that important and that urgent that together we find a way to follow him, to hear what he is saying right now, in this time, in this place, in this culture, with all these needs surrounding us, to forget about our quiet time, to forget about our needs, and to focus on his. And so I ask you, will you do that? Will you take that chance, make a $10 investment, get a book, and start working through it with your brothers and sisters here in this family? I also might want to add as an advertisement, if you get that book through the Orders website, some of that purchase price will help support us. Not a bad thought. But no, in all seriousness, I don't care where you get it, just get it. And let's begin looking at it together. We have a few weeks yet. We still have a good bit of material to cover in our Wednesday night book of Revelation. But I'd like that to take that next. I'd like us to really seriously consider what's being said there, what's being taught there, because it can give us, I believe, the kind of the grace and the kind of growth that we really need, both as individuals and the parish family. So think about that, and pray about that, and think about your need for your quiet time, and ask yourself if it's really all that important. And ask yourself what really is.